Hello, my name is Thomas Bradley. I'm the founder and owner of Persecuted Truth and Persecuted Truth Atelier. Today I want to share a very special story and tell you about the art and inspiration behind the Timely EDC Conductor. So the idea came to me from God, from the Holy Lord of Hosts. He is worthy to be praised. Um, all good and perfect gifts that come from the Father of Lights, and I just want to say again, He alone is worthy to be praised. I also want to say that many times throughout the 7 months and 25 days that I worked on this, I was tempted to give up. I will say that the Lord helped me and cheered me on. This is the story of the Timely EDC Conductor bag. I very much love and respect the Japanese people. I love their undying spirit of craftsmanship, dedication, and spirit to continue on when things get difficult. I made this bag from inspiration of the Seiko Watch Corporation. The Seiko Watch Corporation, as I researched, was born from a desire to make watches and clocks in Japan, in the midst of many European and American clocks and watches filling the market. This was actually before watches were a thing in the late 1800s. Unfortunately, they suffered a fire and it was an opportunity to quit for them. But Kintaro Hattori decided not to quit. Instead, Hattori made the Seikosha factory where the name Seiko comes from. Something interesting that I didn't know before. Now imagine this, okay? The year is 1929. There are automobiles rolling down the street, like old automobiles. People are dressed formally but comfortably. There are beautiful Japanese maple and ginkgo leaves falling and littering all over the ground and street. This was a setting when Seiko gave the Japanese government railway the pocket watch in November of 1929. This moment in history is so monumental for the Japanese punctuality standards culturally that in modern Japan, train delay certificates have been issued to employers due to factors beyond their control. I wanted to replicate the feeling and tell the story properly in art. And the way that I like to make art are in the mediums of silver, leather, and horology, which is called watchmaking. I appreciate the Japanese core philosophy of shunkun, or excuse me, shokunin. It's basically mastering one's profession, driven by spiritual or social obligation. So many people will try to do many things, they'll try to do a variety of different things. But I like to do one or a few different things. And I originally started doing silversmithing. So I moved over to leathercraft initially to complement my silversmithing, but I ended up getting lost in leathercrafting for a couple of years. And then I found silversmithing again. I would heat my own silver bullion, mix in copper if needed for strength, rarely. I would prefer to work with pure silver because it has a lot of really beautiful characteristics. I love when I pour fresh bars of pure silver. I can see the blue confetti-shaped sparkles throughout the surface of the silver bar once it is cooled. It is also really forgiving. Caution must still be taken when working with it to keep it from cracking, of course. But it is much nicer to work with than sterling silver, which is only about 92.5% pure. I recognize that pure silver is much softer, which is why it's mostly used in jewelry. And let's just say I followed my passion when I made this bag, but I reinforced the pieces structurally in specific ways. So normally whenever you're working with silver, you have to keep in mind how soft it is. When I made this chain, I initially tried to make the wire that I initially tried to make the wire that I formed the links with, and I used a hammer and an anvil. Actually, I used this anvil. One second. This anvil. So you can tell it's very heavy. I tried 6 times to make the wire and then formed the chain. It was a very long and difficult process, but I was determined not to quit. Each attempt took 12 to 26 hours, and the final one being 26 hours, it was the most mentally taxing. So I was able to form long wire from hammering, heating it to red hot, cooling it, and then hammering it for hours. And this is hours on, like hours and hours. I wrapped the wire and I clipped the links. It was a success, or so I thought. I was joining the links together. Oh yeah, so I was joining the links together with some silver solder, which I had made myself from 70% pure silver and 30% copper. It was Sunday, August 24th, 2025, and the mosquitoes were attacking me intensely. I ended up heating the links too long and I melted the piece. It was destroyed and I had to make a decision if I was going to continue. I decided that it was the last time I would attempt to make silver wire by hammer and anvil. I researched and came across the English Durston rolling mill. So this is actually something that I had wanted to get in the past. When I first got into silversmithing. Back then, I learned to appreciate what I have, and I made a decision that I wanted to to practice solely with just silversmithing using only 1 or 2 hammers. Basically, at that time, I wanted to perfect my my use of hammers to make silversmithing with, and I just didn't have peace in my heart about investing in a rolling mill at the time. I'd given the desire to get a rolling mill to God, and He ended up bringing me back to it. The machine was $1,800 to arrive, but I was able to afford it. I received the rolling mill and essentially was ecstatic. I was able to roll out the wire after 2 attempts. So keep in mind that with each failed attempt, I had to reheat the silver in the furnace past 2000 degrees Fahrenheit and basically re-pour the bars. I rolled out the wire, formed the links, and soldered the chain in an even more beautiful fashion than I could have hoped to do before. The rings that connect the chain to its accessory, the Seiko watch mod, it's in here. They are, excuse me, are hand hammered from before. Oh, okay. So the rings that connect the chain to the watch mod and also to the bag, they are hand hammered from before I got the rolling mill, of course. And I made the other hardware for this bag using the rolling mill. So this is actually the second part of the story where I almost gave up. I was able to hand forge the hardware, but it was also taxing. I heated the silver ingots that I saved and hammered and rolled them out with my Durston rolling mill. Oh, so sorry, I skipped a part. So I initially made this chain for a different bag, but I ended up melting all the hardware down that was made with the silver chain. But I rescued the chain and some of the silver, totaling to 5 troy ounces, and I made the other hardware for this bag. So this is actually the second part of the story where I almost gave up. I was able to hand forge the hardware, but it was also taxing. I heated the silver ingots that I saved and hammered and rolled them out with my rolling mill, the Durston rolling mill. Making the silver blanks was not too hard, but it took a lot of time to roll, heat, anneal, and continue rolling. But the real difficulty came when I was actually soldering the pieces to make the hardware. I was not heating the silver up properly, and the joints I had made had cracks and did not fuse properly. During that time, I did not record the time, and instead I soldiered on. I finally finished the hardware, or so I thought again, in late January. So this bag design was actually something I had drafted up and designed on drafting vellum or drafting paper in November, and I actually started to craft my own watch components with pure silver, sterling silver, and 18 karat gold. They are somewhere, oh, on the ground. I'll show you in a minute. Okay. My plan initially was to make the whole watch by hand. I tried for many days to research watch tolerances, watchmaking, and I even drew up my own original design. I came to the conclusion that I needed to order a movement, the mechanical heart of the watch, and work from there. I was going with a GMT watch so that I could track multiple time zones. I initially wanted to replicate an old Japanese map of the Earth and have the sun travel across the face of the Earth and return to the point of origin once every 24 hours. This would represent the GMT hour, but be more significant. The GMT hour hand. I tried to design the watch case, but I realized that with my simple jewelry tools I had on hand and no precise measuring tools, the best course of action was to order the case and all the other watertight components from a reputable dealer. I researched the best companies to use and I got everything rolling. So this was actually another point of decision. I had to put the watch together, but I also had to make the watch components from gold and silver. So just, I think I go into it right here. So it did not appear to be that challenging until I researched the exact measurements of the precise watch parts. My plan was to make the dial, the bezel insert, which is on a dive watch. It's that little, they can turn the little ring and it's to help with telling the time. So to make the dial, the bezel insert, and the GMT hand. I did not yet realize that I was in for such a challenging task. I want to expound very briefly how difficult it is to replicate machine tolerance requirements by hand, and I had not yet purchased my digital caliper. Thankfully, I had a Durston rolling mill and a simple brass caliper to check the thickness and the rough dimensions of the part I was making. I was able to make the dial. So I was able to make the dial, the watch face. by laser engraving a piece of cardstock paper with the image and the dial markings that I designed. So making the dial, the face of the watch, designing it is actually it's much more challenging because you have to place the hour hand and the indices, which are like the little marks. You have to place the hour and the indices on hand, and I was using a computer program. So that actually took a very long time to do that. I etched the image into cardstock, which is thicker paper, with each attempt, and then got the silver down to the right thickness, about 0.35 millimeters, which is, it's not, I have the actual dial here, I'll show you. I would then roll the round silver dial blank, with the cardstock dial reversed image into the silver using the rolling mill. So I tried so many times. With each attempt, it would stretch the silver and destroy the image. I think I tried 4 to 5 times to get it correct. And just so you know, like, that's the 4 to 5 times includes basically just using what I had available, or I had to sometimes re-pour the silver and restart back to the 0.35 millimeters. So, and then sometimes redo the image. I was also placing the hole for the date to show, so the date window to show the date. Trying to find where I'm at. Okay, so I was trying to make the hole for the date to show, and that also took a few attempts. The last difficulty was with the dial, excuse me, was making the center hole for the dial to fit the added GMT thickness of the hand tube, where basically the pinion comes through, and you put the hands on, and then they rotate across, you know, the face of the watch and tell you what time it is. I was able to make the dial, but during that time I also was going back and forth between the dial and the bezel ring insert. This is the ring that the dive watch, on a dive watch, that allows you to track the time, etc. To add more difficulty, I chose to try it making the bezel ring insert by rolling an image that I designed into the silver once I got it to what I thought was the right size and thickness. So this was terrible because I tried, or I think that I tried 6 to 8 different attempts to make the bezel ring insert. I ultimately decided upon making the ring and then using my number punches to tap each number in a 24-hour sequence. I finally finished the ring and dial on December 19th, 2025. If you notice, I have backtracked when I finished the other hardware. I wanted to make the watch first. From the hardware, so I wanted to make the watch first, then the hardware, and then the bag. During this escapade of making the watch face and bezel ring insert, I was also making the gold watch hand. Yet again, it was another extremely challenging task. This required more precision and not only thickness, but also balance and poise of the watch hand as it would sit on the pinion of the watch so that it can tell time. And to make matters even more complicated, I am making it out of a much more dense material than brass. So 18 karat gold is way more dense. That's why it's heavier. Or excuse me. Yes, it's more dense and it's heavier. Brass is one of the materials that watch hands are made of. So brass is one of the materials that watch hands are made out of. And I was able to design a watch hand on my computer, and then I was able to use my laser program with the laser engraver to put the design on the paper and then apply it to the gold that I rolled out. So I initially started with about a gram of 18 karat gold. This was actually plenty because the watch hand only has to be I wrote the facts out a little bit backwards here for some reason. So the watch hand, it only has to be 13 millimeters long. It only has to be, I think what is it, 0.20? Oh yeah. Okay, so the hole that the hand sits on the watch and spins, that hole has to be 2.20 millimeters in diameter. So you make it 2.15 millimeters so that whenever you put the watch hand on, it'll fit. But that was just my theory, essentially. And then the actual thickness of the watch, of the GMT hand, it has to be 0.4 millimeters thick because it has to sit with the other watch hands in a stack and not interfere. And all of this has to fit underneath of the crystal, which is the glass of the watch. So as you can imagine, these requirements demand the utmost precision. I actually tried to make the gold hand so many times that I ended up whittling down my amount of gold to less than 0.30 grams. 0.30, that's 0.3 out of 10. So with each attempt I got better though. I used my cheap jeweler's saw and a magnifying glass to precisely cut the tiny gold watch hand out of the blink. And I just want to give you some background information. This jeweler's saw, it was my first time using it to do this. I'd wanted to do this before, but I had never. And so doing it with such a tiny little piece, it's not really that hard, but it definitely presented some challenges. Let me see where we at. Okay. One second. Okay, so essentially, I was then able to bore out the hole with a little drill bit and set the poise of the watch hand. The poise is how it sits. It's like how it balances, the poise and balance of the watch hand. So my goal was to make this tiny watch hand balance on my X-Acto knife at the center of this little tiny hole that's 2.15 millimeters wide. So I unfortunately was unable to make the hand balance properly and be strong enough. I would polish the gold hand and make it ready, but discover that it was structurally not strong enough to hold up the installation, basically installation of the watch, or it wasn't strong enough to hold up to installation, as well as a lifetime of use. I finally made one of the last attempts. I think I tried anywhere from 4 to 6 times to do this. And the watch hand broke. So out of frustration, I launched half of the watch hand with a tool by just pressing on it against the rubber mat it rested on. I was yet again very low, and this was on December 26th, 2025. Basically what that looks like is I pushed on this little watch hand because I was frustrated that it broke, and the half snapped off and flew into oblivion. During that winter, I worked in upstate New York installing solar for a week, rooftop solar, like the solar panels. I worked for a week or so, and I was considering how I would go about finishing the bag. I worked with leather. I worked with the leather. So this is after I got back. I worked with the leather I had, and I was able to make Tom's tool bag. I thought I was going to go back and install solar again, but afterward I was able to start making the bag for the Timely everyday carry conductor bag, the Timely EDC Conductor. I designed the bag on light burn using real images that I researched and found of Japanese trains and Japanese maple and ginkgo leaves. I got the leather. It's full grain leather, natural vegetable tanned. It's just a longer process, more time consuming, and it just results in my opinion, it's better. But there's also really good chrome tanned bags. But I digress. So I made it with full grain, natural vegetable tan leather, and I began putting the images onto the leather. So this took a precise balance of heat and time. And when I say heat and time, I mean whenever you're using the laser, you have to put the images on precisely with the precise amount of heat and time. So I played around with different settings, but ultimately I was able to get as close to the old picture, to the original picture, as I could, and what I got was sheer nostalgia. The train that is on the front of this bag. This is called the EC457. So this is the train that was actually in service from 1969 to 2014. So this would be the train that most people think of whenever that live in Japan, of course. Um, Basically, it's sheer nostalgia for them. Um, and then the train that is on the back of the bag, right here, this one, it's called the JGR because it was the Japanese government railway, so not JNR. JNR is the Japanese National Railway. The JGR is the government railway. That was before the Japanese National Railway was called that. So this one is called the C51 steam locomotive. So it's what would have pulled the cars that carried either people or goods. So I wanted to show the two different variants of the Japanese train history with this. I started making the bag, excuse me, I started making the bag on April 11th of 2026. And I worked on it until May 6th when I thought it was done. I had ordered the pocket watch in parts as the budget permitted from Crystal Times. I found that they have high quality parts that are tested and rated for better water resistance than most other companies. I also didn't want to use parts that most people order from the massive websites. Initially, I went with all the parts that I couldn't hand make, excuse me, at that time, along with the pure silver dial, the sterling silver gilded bezel ring insert, and the 18-karat gold watch hand. I told you that I initially failed with the watch hand. That was actually after I took it in. So I took it in to get the parts put together. When returning from trying to get them put together, I was trying to polish the watch hand better, and it snapped near that little hole, the 2.20 millimeter sized hole. It's called the pinion hole. It snapped near that center hole. So the one jewelry place that I took it actually ended up being the only place that would even try. The only watchmaker that would agree to assemble the Seiko mod. So I chose to do a Seiko mod initially because of the durability, the service maintenance. It's not as expensive. It's what I had access to for building. I could just, and also Seiko and GMT, of course. So, before I had the watch shipped to their main store where the watchmaker is located, they let me at least try to assemble the crystal and the bezel ring, which is the part that the insert sits inside. So they let me put the crystal on and the bezel ring. But this is where I found out that my tolerances were a little bit off on the bezel insert, the silver piece that I had made. So it was rubbing against the crystal slightly and not allowing the bezel ring to rotate. And I mean, keep in mind, these are very precise tolerances that are required. It was also near impossible to put the bezel ring on. Like, I was using the press, and I was like basically at one point I think I put all my weight, my body weight down onto it. So this is actually a hint to trouble later on in the story. But on May 7th, I got another gram of gold and I proceeded to mix it with silver and copper and successfully make my own 18 karat gold. I was going to make the watch hand again. I thought I was going to, but I actually realized a week later on May 14th that I didn't want to focus on watchmaking yet. It was simply too demanding, and my only way out of this was to sell the gold and order the necessary watch components to finish the build. I decided to order a proper GMT watch dial, a high quality ceramic bezel ring insert. Ceramics, it's a good material. And a high visibility orange GMT hand to complement the fall theme. I took the watch to the maker and they sent the watch to the city with the promise that they would only do what they could and I would have to pay full service price, which for them it was $200. I said, yeah. So I waited a month, it's as it seemed. I think it was a month, and they called to report that the bezel ring, the thing I tried to press on, it did not go on, and they're sending it back. And initially, I would have to pay the $200 still. So I attempted to get them to attach it, but they said they refused because they had tried for many days, they claimed, to put it on. So at this point, I had to trust in God as my provider because I didn't have any more money in the budget for this watch. I was already $619 in after that $200 service fee, which is actually pretty good. So they offered to install the bezel ring insert for free and expedite it. The manufacturer was contacted, and after a back and forth with the watchmaker, Crystal Times was so gracious to send the new bezel ring insert, or excuse me, the new bezel ring, the new part, for free and to ship it at no cost, which is amazing. I took the watch back and the new ring, the new bezel ring, and they sent it back to the watchmaker. I waited for what seemed to be another month. Expedite. But I think it was only a few weeks. So they called, quoting me $50, right? So I didn't have it in the budget, but most importantly, I wanted to help them to keep their word. I showed them evidence of their claim to do it for free, that I had made them write on paper. This is a service member lesson. So I got the watch back in a short week, but during that time, awaiting the return of the watch, I realized that I had extra leather lying around, and the Lord said to me in prayer, make tiny bags. So I started making the Timely EDC Conductor, the tiny, and I finished after the watch returned. I was able to make a near replica of the Timely bag, and I connected it to the bag using a nickel-plated trigger snap. That's the little thing that connects it to the bag. I received the watch back and attached it to this special leather carrier. So I received the watch back and I put it in the little Timely mini bag. And I put it on like it was meant to be. So during the awaiting of the watch, the first time, I noticed a major design flaw, which only presented itself fully when I tested the bag. The zipper on top, the original way it opened and closed, the zipper on top, it didn't open wide enough to comfortably put things in the bag and take them out, but I was able to design a snap system, you can see here, using nickel-plated line 20 snaps. So I incorporated that design trait into the mini bag as well. So I had finished making the mini bag and the whole ensemble on July 7th, 2026, marking 7 months and 25 days. In total, what this showed me was that all the things that I didn't think were related all came together to make a story of grit, determination, heart, and commitment. And that is something that can truly, but really only attempt to honor the Japanese people. So I want to go ahead and show you the silver work that I did first, and then I'm going to show you the bag next. Here is the pure silver watch dial that I made. And this was done with all hand tools. As you can see, it's very thin. And here is the bezel ring insert. If I could get it out. So gilded silver is just heating the silver up, annealing it, or pickling, which is where you get the top, any discoloration that comes up to the top. Once you heat it, you remove it with the acid, and then you keep heating it until it's just a frosty look. But I used single digits to represent double digits, essentially starting at 0, and then whenever I got to 10, it would be a 1, of course. And then here is the bag. So it has a full shoulder strap that's made out of a belt blank. I wanted to replicate a webbing strap where it's like the cloth, but here is the little silver. This has 3 prongs and the strap is fed through there. Here's this is another piece of the hardware here. If you notice, it has this little rectangular piece where the two pieces are joined. That gives it structure. It's on both sides. And then as well, there's like a center bar in the silver, or excuse me, in the circle, that provides crushing support. But what's really cool is I was able to attach this nickel trigger snap onto that little part. Here's the train, the EC457, which EC stands for electric car. The back of the bag. And something that's really special about this bag is it has these leaves across the whole, all of the surfaces. It's just added extra pieces of leather and silver they cover. This pocket initially was going to hold the whole pocket watch and the chain. That's actually before I realized how large the pocket watch and chain were. So this is a 21 inch pure, or excuse me, 99% pure silver chain. So this is the chain. If you can hear that. And then it connects to this leather tab. This leather tab has a piece of holster leather that is fed through and then stitched. So essentially, this tab isn't going to release the watch. The only way that the watch could be released is if you depressed the little spring clips that hold the watch on, like a standard watch has. So here's the watch. And it's actually really nice. It has an S for Seiko right here. But it has this rotating bezel ring. And you can't hear it clicking, you can only feel it, which is actually quite nice. And then something else that's really cool about this is that the majority of the parts of this, they glow in the dark. So that's very useful. This is a Panerai inspired Seiko mod case. The watch, that the size and all the tolerances are based on the SKX 007 by Seiko. So this is the chain. As you can tell, it has like a helix style pattern to it. And then here's one of the rings that I hand hammered. And then the other one is connected right here. So inside of the main bag, it's fully lined with sheepskin, which I like to do that because it's just softer and it's nice to do. Here's the inside. So it has 3 pockets on the inside. You can put your phone, your wallet, and then like a pocket knife or whatever you want to do. And then it has these snaps that hold it in place. And I can actually carry a journal, a Bible, and my other things in here as well. And then this is the replica mini bag, and it's also fully lined. And all of the pockets, they are lined as well with the sheepskin. So the mini bag, it also has a fully usable zipper, just like the bigger one. And then last but not least, let's go ahead and put this watch back in its pouch. Last but not least, I have a silver plate that I poured. I believe it's 1 troy ounce of silver. And then I was able to roll the logo of Persecuted Truth Atelier into the silver. Along with the physical aspect of this bag, the story as well, I have fully documented all 131 hours of work on this bag. 131 hours of documented work. There was some undocumented work that went into it. And I have stored all of the information with a NFC chip. So essentially what you do is you put your phone up to it and it pulls up the full provenance page. And so this has a threefold nature to the bag: the craft, the story, and the full provenance stack. And this links it to a digital copy of the bag that's actually located on the Ethereum blockchain, and it's stored forever. So the whole history, the whole certificate of authenticity, the build PDF, all of the photographs, any other files, they're stored permanently using Arweave, which is better than IPFS. And essentially what that means is that you're going to have access to these files. And this NFC chip is rated for 50 years. It's called the NTAG 424 DNA. And the certificate of authenticity is handwritten by me. And it shows that this product, for one, it can't be copied. And two, it shows that this product, or this bag I should say, is a one of one. So you have the full story as well with the pictures. And then you have the links to all of the manifold, all of the other digital links as well. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.